Back in early 2001, I was at the mall with my parents, and I think we were just browsing. I don't think it was anything special. Back then, my parents used to be, for a little outing, they take us to a mall. We get to walk around, get some exercise, look at stores, and maybe sometimes buy clothes or whatever if we needed something. And my parents saw something. Anyways, this particular trip in the mall, though, I noticed a store that I had never noticed before. It, I think it's because we didn't tend to go to this mall this often. This was a different mall than we usually went to. Granted, both these between the two malls that were really close to us, they were about the same distance. The main reason why we went to this mall over the other one, which we usually went to, because the traffic was a lot better. But we were going to this mall. I think it was because the other mall had already started to kind of its downcline and things were starting to close. The area was getting worse. But went in there and I saw this really unique store. These big yellow letters with the red outline. It said Games Workshop. And there's these three men in there. They're all young men, 20s, maybe early 30s, all in these red shirts. They were really nice. My parents took me in there and we started talking to them and looking around, and I come to realize that this wasn't any normal game store. But the thing about this was that actually really excited me. Because usually when we go to game stores, like video games and stuff, it was mostly for my dad at the time, because my dad was the gamer. Me and my brother, we played, I don't know, we played the N64, we used to play Atari, but, we weren't huge gamers yet. And I was awestruck because I was being introduced to a whole new world and a whole new type of gaming that I didn't know existed. But there were so many new and interesting aspects about it that I really found interesting. And we were looking around and on these big, nice display tables with a whole bunch of really decent looking terrain. I think there was one that was like the side of a mountain. You could see trees and there was a small river running down it. And on this hill, there was this caravan of orcs, and charging upon them were these mounted Empire Knights carrying lances. And I was like, that's really cool. There was another table that had these armored men, and across for them were these like skinny, like evil-looking things. I haven't figured it out yet. I'm talking. There was It was modeled from the starter sets. Back then, it was orcs and goblins versus the Empire, and then Space Marines and Dark Eldar. I looked at the 40K stuff. It looked interesting, but what really caught my eye, because at this point in time in my life, I was 12. I was reading Lord of the Rings and all that stuff, and I saw all these fantasy things. Then I started looking on the wall. I saw a whole bunch of different blisters, all these little fantasy figures in them. I so fascinated. I was just like, I'm looking at the table. I've seen these beautiful painted ones, and I look back, and they're just these little metal models, these little pewter models in boxes. I'm just like, so you can have them look any way you want, really. The guys are like, yeah, that's part of what this thing is. I said, that is so cool. And then that day, getting my first white dwarf. And every month, I'd come back and get a white dwarf. And I think me and my brother, just to get the rules and to try out the game a little bit and stuff, we ended up picking up the starter box, and We split it. I think we split it up where he had the Empire, I had the Orcs, and we played some games, did some stuff. We never hadn't really painted them yet, but kept going back, and it was a really cool place to go. I loved it. Every trip there was something new and something interesting to look at. Sometimes I'd walk in and they're playing games, and I could watch a game for about 20 minutes. And one of the best things back then was that you'd have 3 or 4 workers in the store, and they were fun people, and you could chat with them almost the entire time. You weren't wasting their time. They weren't hugely pushing product on you. They'd tell funny stories. It'd be awesome. It was so much fun. So personable. That was what was great about the Games Workshop stores back then. Well, and then my birthday came around. I was like, I'd really like to get into this. I'd really like to get more than just this little starter army. I'm like, you know what? I'm not a huge fan of the Orcs. Well, 2001, my birthday's in June. And if you don't know, Army was getting a new army book and some new models around that time, and they were getting this huge starter army pack. I looked at it and was like, oh, these are brand new. They know it'd be really cool getting the brand new things. And I did. So I got the Dark Elves. This huge box of a whole bunch of brand new Dark Elves models. And I still have them. And I still love them. And that was my first real experience in falling in love with this hobby. And I proceeded to go on and paint and not get to play as much just because I didn't know too many people who played, but I got to paint and I got to experience the hobby ever since I was 12. And that's really cool because I'm 26 now. I'm going to be 27 this June. And 15 years later, this hobby is still a huge part of my life. This hobby's my job. Anyways, this is Minis on the Mind, episode 7. I'm sorry it took so long, but a lot of things have been going on. We're looking at trying to move this summer. I'm getting married soon. So things have been hectic, and I apologize. But I wanted it to be calm. I wanted it to be nice. I wanted it to be a nice reminiscing time when I finally got around to this video. Right now I felt like it. So what I really want to know is I'd really love to hear other people's stories about some of their earliest and most favorable memories of getting into miniatures. It doesn't have to be Games Workshop either. It can be any miniatures game. We'll say that you're not a huge Games Workshop fan. Maybe you used to play, and something newer really reignited your fire. I'd love to hear that story. So please, in the comments below, tell me your story. I want to hear it. Thank you, everyone. Episode 8. I will be back with episode 8, and we're going to do another army book. Just talk about an army a little bit and what makes them awesome. This time we're going to do fantasy, and I'm going to be talking about vampire counts. I will see you then. Everyone take care. I love you. Hello, everyone. If you'd like to help this channel and watch it grow, there's a link to the Patreon down below. There are some benefits to the Patreon, such as you're able to see tutorials and other sorts of videos a little bit early, as well as other perks. Just check it out below, and you can also see some of my goals in the near future. Everything is completely voluntary, and I still am going to try to work towards those regardless if there are Patreon contributors or not. I love you all, and thank you for even thinking about this or listening to me.